Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.
Laurence, Marks and Maurice Gran have been writing together since the 1970s, mostly for TV, their most famous works being sitcoms such as Shine On Harvey Moon, Birds of a Feather, Goodnight, Sweetheart and The New Statesman. They have also written for radio and for stage musicals such as Dreamboats and Petticoats. But their latest piece, currently running at London's Upstairs at the Gatehouse, is a serious play based on an earlier piece they wrote for radio called Dr. Freud Will See You Now, Mrs. Hitler. I spoke to Laurence and Maurice the day after they had watched the first night of the production and asked them to explain what the play was about, and apologies that Maurice's sound is sometimes a little unclear due to the quality of the connection.
Go on, Maurice, tell him.
It's about an imagined relationship between Freud and Hitler based on historical research and a certain amount of imagination. Freud and Hitler's paths crossed repeatedly. Hitler, as a troubled and abused child, was taken to the GP who suggested to his mother be taken to a child psychiatrist in Vienna. That never happened, but we wondered what it had happened. Would it have made a difference? What would their relationship have been like, if anything? And so that was the initial thought, based on Laurence reading about Hitler's childhood initially, probably 30 years ago.
Right.
And then we worked on it intermittently. We had ideas of it being a major motion picture. Ended up as a major radio core drama, which is the next best thing. And now, a mere 18 years later, here it is.
Right. So it's been 30 years in the making. Is this normal for ideas to sort of...
No. 35 years, in fact, since I read the book that sort of made me think this could have been referred to. Not that it happened, but it could have happened. And once we realised that, I think we started with the idea, as Maurice said, as it being a feature film. And then I just don't think anyone would make it. Well, that's clearly what happened. So we put it away, really, and then a radio producer who was told about it, and I can't remember the circumstances, said, would you write it for Radio 4? I'd like to do it as an afternoon play. And so we did. It was, I think I'm right in saying, it was our first radio play. So we weren't completely knowledgeable about writing for radio, which is a completely different discipline. And then last year, we were asked if it had a reading after the radio play. The Freud Museum in London asked us if they could present an evening with the play being read on stage in the Tricycle Theatre in London's Kilburn. And we said, and the money would be raised to go to the Freud Museum. And we said, yes, of course. And it was read by the radio cast largely. And the audience, which was chock full, as it was last night's first night, comprised Hampstead psychotherapists and psychoanalysts, I think. And whilst it was a very successful evening, after the reading, Maurice and I were invited onto the stage to take questions from these analysts and therapists, which was more daunting than writing the play. Anyway, the play then went to bed and stayed there from 2007 until last year, when I went to see a play upstairs at the Gatehouse, and I was standing at the bar before they were letting the audience in, and a woman came over to me and said, are you Laurence and Maurice? To which I replied, no, I'm only one of them. And she said to me, okay, I was in the audience for your Hitler-Freud play, which I thought was absolutely splendid. Would you allow us, I'm a patron of this theatre, to have your play put on stage here? And I said, I'll ask Maurice, and the rest came to pass.
Have you done much work on it since then?
We had to adapt it from radio play to stage play because, of course, on radio there is no movement, it's voices. And here, last night, we saw for the first time in front of an audience the characters that we have lived with for 35 years suddenly move about.
Yeah.
And obviously with the theatre, the director comes in and everyone else, the designer, the new design of the lighting. It's a three-dimensional experience. I don't have to tell you that. So that was a treat for us. We rewrote it. We had, at one time, we had so much material because when it wasn't movie, it was obviously a miniseries. So I think if we went through our media, I'm sure we could find a box of now inaccessible floppy disks containing 10 times the information that is in the play. But the basic structure was that Freud could have come across Hitler as a student, as a soldier, and eventually as a Führer. They were in the same page at the same time. And so once we had that, within the confines of the opportunities, depending on your point of view, of a small theatre like the theatre upstairs at the Gatehouse, you have to really be imaginative and you need a creative director that you have and a great cast that you have, because the cast have to create the room, the space, the world.
Yeah.
Because you haven't got £50,000 worth of workshop.
Yeah, yes. So how old is Hitler at this point when the play
He
happens?
starts at about 7 and he works through to 45, 50. It's a big stretch for the actor.
Yeah.
Although, it's not a film. You don't have to make him up to be different all the time or have a child playing the child Hitler, another actor playing the teenage Hitler, and then an actor playing the Führer. One actor does it all with movement and imagination.
Yeah.
So it covers really Hitler's life in many ways, from the time he lived in Linz as a child through to the time he captured Austria in 1938.
And all the time he's visiting Freud in your version.
Well, yes, both. He wants Freud. I got the impression watching last night's play that he wants Freud to be as much a father figure as he does a therapist. He claims he's never a patient.
Right.
He learns a great deal about capturing the imagination of the masses from Freud's work.
The relationship between patient and therapist is a sort of mimics the child-parent relationship in the West of the time. And, of course, Hitler's problem with his father became the world's problem, as Freud explains it. And so we were aware this is a play which carried sort of a fair amount of responsibility. What are we saying about Freud and Hitler? What are we saying about psychotherapy and psychoanalysis and its usefulness or uselessness? And because neither of us is a psychotherapist, appearances to the contrary, we've had to do this with some trepidation. As Laurence said, when we had the reading at the Tricycle, and the chair of the question and answer invited questions, and she was a leading psychotherapist as well. None of the questions was, how dare you? That was a relief.
Yeah.
And because we were aided by probably the country's leading academic professor in the field of Freudian studies, John Forrester, we sort of felt fairly confident that the words we put into Freud's mouth were valid. It was much harder to find an authoritative Hitlerian to help us a bit thin on the ground.
Yeah.
Although they're coming out of the woodwork now.
Although last night, interestingly enough, after the first performance, someone came over to me and said either my wife or my sister, who was in the audience, is a psychotherapist and a study of Freud, and was impressed by how much, or not how much, by how all of it you got right, and said to him, they must have done God knows how much research, because every reference was a correct reference. Well, that really was due to the late John Forrester as much as it was to us.
Right.
He would even say, well, an interesting thing is that around this time, Freud was publishing a monograph called The Child is Being Beaten. It was actually quite appropriate that it had come to him at that time. So there were things in it with no amount of imagination would have provided, if they were provided by knowledge.
Why was Hitler why was he recommended to see a psychiatrist in the first place?
Well, he was a badly beaten child,
Right.
and he kept wetting the bed, apparently. I mean, he did keep wetting the bed. Mum was quite anxious about this and took him to the local GP, a man called Dr. Edmund Bloch. And Bloch tried everything in his knowledge to try and stop this. I'm pretty sure Bloch had no idea that the cause of this was probably the neurosis caused by being beaten quite badly by his father. And Bloch actually said there is a very eminent doctor in Vienna who's just started his own clinic for child neurosis. I'd like to refer you to him. And that happened to be Freud.
Right.
So then, of course, in reality, that the reference was not taken up.
Someone last night said to me, if only he had been sent. The audience, I ought to say, was not predominantly, but certainly very largely Jewish last night.
Right.
And of course, where there is light in our text and even laughter, people were quite afraid to laugh because the words either came out of or were addressed to Hitler.
Yeah, because it's even like 75 years on from his death.
Yes.
Seeing him portrayed seriously, not as a ridiculous character, and in the title.
And there were moments you felt laughter was about to come out before, this is only my interpretation, before the audience realised, no.
Yeah.
No, too serious to laugh at.
Also, of course, it was the first preview, and so the cast has to gauge the audience.
Yeah.
Whether they played it to but the actors playing Freud and Hitler inhabit those roles pretty well, to say the least. And the young actor playing Hitler was quite scary when he had it. It's also pathetic.
Yeah.
And someone said at the end, well, I'm really upset that I'm finding myself sympathetic with Hitler.
Yeah, that's probably one of the most controversial things you can do, because he was a human being with,
That's exactly my answer to the person that said that to me.
Yeah.
He was a human. Don't think he was beyond humanity. All his choices were his choices. They didn't come from some mythical world. And of course, that enters a debate which I didn't have time to start, let alone finish, because we had 80 miles to drive home. So another time, perhaps Saturday. I'm going on Saturday. So but I'm absolutely sure that each night's audience will react differently. Yeah. They'll all, of course, be anxious about taking a side with Hitler, but you might get audiences over the course of this run that start laughing, feel they can loosen up. Yeah. But I don't know. It's played very, very serious.
But you came across similar sorts of criticism when you were writing like 30 years ago about Oswald Mosley, didn't you?
Yeah. And that was because it was on television, not on the stage, aroused very, very much more antagonism. How dare you even make this man human? He was the scourge of the East End of London and Manchester and Glasgow.
I mean, it goes without saying that I hate to say things like the role of the dramatist. When you write a play about historical characters, then you have to try to understand them and try to understand their journey. Mosley, particularly, was something of a classic tragic hero. brought down by a single overriding fault, which in his case was his impatience and his overconfidence. So maybe two faults, if they might have said, in the Spanish Inquisition. Two overriding faults: his impatience, his incontinence. Anyway, that's a Monty Python reference you can cut out. I think the thing about Mosley was that he, like many MPs who failed or gone to the dark side, he wasn't born to be a villain.
As Hitler wasn't, of course.
He made life choices. Hitler was the product of the world in which he grew up before he remolded that world to make it even worse.
But of all the work we've done, I mean, the biggest criticism and even death threats we received was for a film we wrote which was about a murder inside the Orthodox Jewish community. So the threats were coming from Jews, right. and the newspaper Bile came from Jews.
We think of ourselves as equal opportunity offenders.
Whereas this, I think the play we're talking about is seen as a serious piece of work, and so a scholarly piece of work, I'd say. So people are loath to criticise. They can criticise the dramatic value of the play, but they won't criticise the historical value of the play.
Right.
I think by press night, that feel that the cast would have relaxed.
Yeah.
But I thought the cast were very good last night, actually.
Also relaxed a little.
For a first ever performance, I thought they did exceedingly well.
I've been referring to it as a very dark comedy, and I don't want them to start referring to it as a very light tragedy.
Or a comedy without laughter.
I don't know. It's quite interesting because we haven't really written anything for the theatre before, which is our seriousness. And being serious, of course, is not laughter. It's a very serious thing.
Yeah, because even in the darkest of Shakespeare plays like Macbeth, there's got to be some comic relief to give the audience a break, haven't they?
Yes, absolutely.
You've got to have the porter to get Macbeth to get his pit off and change his outfit. I believe that all the clowns in Shakespeare are for stage management.
I think you were told when you wrote when you were writing the Oswald Mosley piece that being Jewish writers might protect you from some criticism.
That's what we thought.
Yeah.
Because originally we wanted, having had the idea, we wanted a non-Jew to write it for our company. And he said what you've said. He said that, no, you must do it because you will be accepted. It will be an accepted piece because you're Jews. We were on one program where we were heavily criticised for having the audacity to write it as Jews. We should have known better, I think he said.
And the entire community is your mother. So they all feel entitled to tell you well. But I think with Mosley, we wrote it, the four-parter, and we wrote it very much sequentially. It starts at the beginning and ends at the end. And of course, it would have been easy to start at the end and flash back. And that's become a sort of trope, if not a cliche, of filmmaking. And it has its benefits, but also it has its disadvantages. Which is basically, when you open a thriller, you don't want to say, Butler stood there with a smoking gun 5 years earlier. So I'm not a huge fan of anticipating things. But therefore, with Mosley, people had to spend 2.5 out of 4 hours thinking, he's not a bad chap, really. I mean, he's like another woman he's not married to, but then we all do that. And so, but you do that on purpose. You want to seduce the audience and make them have ambivalent feelings about the protagonist.
Yeah. With a character like Hitler, and, well, I'm about a mile away from Dr. Shipman's surgery when he finished. So people like that, I think people are fascinated even after all this time because they want to know why, don't they? And I think that's what you're addressing, really, is it? Trying to find out why.
Well, in our imaginary world, why?
Yeah.
I think the audience understood at the end. I was actually stopped looking at the stage and was looking at the audience, and they were sitting there with their fingers in their mouth, because at the point at which, in the last piece, where Hitler comes in as Führer in 1938, and Freud, who is by this time in great pain with cancer of the jaw, is dozed off, and Hitler walked in, and I could see by the eyes of the audience that they thought Hitler was going to come in and murder him. And he just played it beautifully, because he didn't do anything. He then sat down, picked up Freud's cigar, put it in the ashtray, just sat there and waited, and no one was quite sure what was going to happen. I'm not sure by this time, I don't know, this is where I'm writing a review of it from last night, that Hitler actually needed this man. He'd come as Führer because I need you. I still can't lose the tragedy that I've suffered through the hands of my father. And can you help me, please? Now, I'm the most powerful man in the world, yet I'm still haunted by this ghost that was inside of me when I first came to see you as a 6-year-old. And I think that was the thinking. And people followed it. You know, it wasn't a play which people thought, I'm a bit confused now. Why is he coming back to see? It locked people in. And I thought that was really good. And that's why I stopped looking at the play and started looking at the audience. And of course, having a largely Jewish audience, I suppose, I don't know this, they invested a lot more in the play than perhaps otherwise might have been the case.
I'm guessing there might be things you don't want to give away about what happens, but from what you're saying, it sounds like the events that actually happen in history are still happening in the background. So perhaps Freud doesn't have as much effect as we might like to think.
Well, that's a very smart question. One of the conundrums, or it might be conundrum, that you faced was: do we write a counterfactual in which Freud saved the world by curing Hitler? Really not. It was on, but it never crossed our mind. Do we say it would have been all right if Freud hadn't interfered with it? It would have got better for Freud. Does history take its course? I won't give anything away, except as Laurence said, Hitler is Führer by the time he takes over Austria in 1938. But yes, we worked with the grain of history to understand. Really, I suppose, if I had to say in a single sentence what we tried to achieve, it would be to understand Hitler, because the monstrosity of his action has made him inexplicable to most people. Although there's a very good line in a Woody Allen film, I think it's Secrets of Lies, where a character says of yet another outrage, it might have been Cambodia at the time the film was made. The mystery isn't why these genocides happen at all, but why they're going to happen more. View of the life, isn't it? So today, President Trump has announced that they're renaming the Department of Defense Department of War in America. He could join from the man defense firms. There you go. And all bets are off the table.
Perhaps it's a very timely play. Perhaps people do see and not want to see, not feel comfortable seeing, the parallels between Hitler and Trump.
Yeah, it's what I was going to say, actually. It does seem very timely, and that's, I mean, it's dangerous to start bandying words like fascist and Nazi around about things that are happening in contemporary politics, although they have been. But this victimization of the weakest, and finding those in society who feel left out and telling them you've got all the answers and it's not your fault.
There is a line in the play that says almost what you've just said. The more complicated life. The more complicated life is, the simpler we seek our solutions.
That's what, but Freud said in about 1900 exactly that. You know, as modern life becomes more complicated, the bigger it's simpler and complicated.
Yeah.
The other side Hitler, that he seeks any sort of celebrity, I feel is the disease of the new century. He didn't say that in 2000, he said it in 1900. We quoted before. I think that I'd always liked the term crypto-fascist. Because fascism can hide under any number of red baseball caps. And indeed under skull caps.
I think that Farage was quite wrong to compare Starmer with Kim Jong-un. And so fascism or dictatorships are bandied about far too easily. It might be shorthand, but it's bad shorthand. Whereas of Hitler, you could say that he was a dictator. That's really what he wanted to be. And Trump really wanted to be that thing too. But I mean, the play should have come on now, and people can see there are parallels, there are similarities. Is good timing, but not by our choice, of course.
I think if a play is a success, serious success, it takes on the number of topicalities. So, when David Harewood Racing Dean about the Church of England battles for diplomacy amongst bishops, he might going on a Labour Party level. But he may or may not have intended that to be the case. Probably did, to got the bastard. But the point that good plays, somehow find, an echo in the world we live in, even if the play isn't about.
They'll probably say that about you. They'll say they knew that this had actually been run. This play had to run alongside Trump's autocracy in America. Aren't they clever? But you just write a play, that's the thing.
It took 3 years to release their bomb.
Huh.
As you very well know, almost everything in the theatre and in television and in film is post-auction. We've been trying to get a movie made for 5 years. It might just get made next year. And for reasons of auction will be so topical, much more topical than had been made than it should have been made. And I was like, what's that? It was so clever holding that back. So I'm prepared to take any undeserved back.
Yeah, I mean, there are two sides to that, in that, it is a historical drama now. It's only 75 years ago, but it's a historical drama, and there is a theory that all historical dramas are really about the present day anyway. But on the other side of it, audiences will read into it something relevant to their lives if there's any substance to play anyway, won't they?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's just good fortune, good timing. But it played very well, and look, it's a thought-provoking play. People coming out of the theatre last night were saying, this might have happened, or if this happened, would it have made any difference? So let them go away on their car ride home, on their train ride home, and be thinking, it was convincing enough to make me think it might have been the case.
Yeah.
No one said, or at least not to me, this is ludicrous. Hitler could never have possibly, had we said it was Kim Jong-il that went to see Freud, everyone would say, well, it was impossible. It couldn't have been. But these people were in the same place at the same time on, as we understand, 4 occasions. So nobody will say the play is impossible. They'll merely say it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, Terry Johnson has written a few plays where real people could have met but didn't, like when he has Marilyn Monroe explaining the theory of relativity to Einstein in a hotel room. Brilliant touch. But
that's right. You're quite right. And I think Terry Johnson wrote a play about Freud and Salvador Dali.
Yes, he did.
And could it have happened? possibly. That one, you think to yourself, well, was Darley ever in Maresfield Gardens? I doubt it. So, but if the play really just invites you in, and you're happy to sit there for that time and believe that what you're seeing is happening, then you've succeeded.
It's quite common for sitcoms to be written by duos. Some of the greatest ones have, but it's more unusual for plays. Playwriting tends to be more of a solo activity. So how has it worked between you?
On different really, we get stuck with each other, and we sort of we develop ideas, and that's just how it's been for such a long time. I need Laurence to shout that, and he needs me to moan that, and that's the relationship. And of course, you reinforce each other's ideas and you back each other up.
It shouldn't really be any different to writing a comedy, only in length.
If you came, the first thing that the theatre was to animate for, and that was a comedy. Then much of other theatre work has been started as Radio 4 plays. We've done 3 of those now. And musicals, of course, are quite often written by partners. So we haven't sort of ever found ourselves in a situation where you have a monomaniacal musician which looks no alternative view. And maybe we've both got a monomaniacal play within us and we can write it back because we're grabbing. But it hasn't been a problem, really. And writing is a lonely path. And most of the people we know who write somebody on their own are quite there.
So how does it work between you? Are you in the same room or do you pass scripts between you?
Exactly opposite to what we're doing now. We both sit around a keyboard with a screen in front of us. Always been that way. I mean, even in 4 decades ago, we were sitting with a keyboard and a screen. There wasn't such a thing as a mouse then, so we had to do it all by arrows. How does it work? You plan what you want to write. You do a comprehensive storyline, follow the storyline, and turn it into dialogue. It sounds very simple, but it isn't very simple. Otherwise, everyone would be doing it.
Exactly.
Even AI can't do it.
No.
We tried. We asked AI, ChatGPT, to give us a first scene of a new Birds of a Feather, and it was terrible.
I think AI at the moment can't write jokes, thankfully. It can make a stab at dialogue because it can draw on hundreds of hours of pre-existing dialogue from those characters. If you said to an AI, ChatGPT, can you create a new comedy series about a shopkeeper who's in love with a delivery boy, and create the characters, that would be a bigger challenge, which it might not rise to, but might well rise to in another couple of years. So hopefully we'll be dead before that.
Oh, certainly will be. I mean, it won't happen for a long, long time.
No.
All right. We have been working on another piece, which has a scene which takes place in the Yiddish theatre in the East End of London 100 years ago. And because we found it impossible, despite looking everywhere, nearly in the Library of Congress, to find any Yiddish versions of classic plays, although we know they did that here at the light, we asked ChatGPT to translate the scene from "You've got to be in earnest" into Yiddish. You could do about 10 seconds. And then we asked it to turn the Yiddish into English phonetics, which it did in another 10 seconds. So now we've got a scene which we couldn't have written, I couldn't have found. It wasted 2 or 3 days Googling it, and then it wrote in 20 seconds. But the interesting thing was, you could tell from my limited knowledge of Yiddish where it differed greatly from the original text. So clearly, ChatGPT, in its scraping, the Asian head of literature, must have found the Yiddish version of the apocryphal, because there were changes in it that ChatGPT, there was a Yiddish joke in the Oswald certainly did it right.
Yeah.
And if you research the history of the Yiddish theatre, you'll find a playbill that says something like "The Merchant of Venice," translated and improved by Jaime Cohen. They've all bowdlerized anyway. So ChatGPT had found the Jaime Cohen version of the Apocalypse of being honest. So as a researcher, it's a pretty good thing.
Yeah. I did once. We have an email newsletter every Sunday, and I asked, just as an experiment, I asked ChatGPT to rewrite the first couple of paragraphs in Shakespearean style, and it did it really well. It's very good at copying a style like that.
It's a wonderful facility if you're a researcher. I was once a researcher, and was tasked with finding someone that had appeared in the public realm for 26 years. I didn't even have there were no computers. This was in 76. If I'd have had GPT, I could have probably found him in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So that, as a researcher, I should think the facility, as a playwright, I should think it is of no use to you very much at all. But anyway, I digress, because that really doesn't have anything to do with either Hitler or Freud. They worked with their brains.
Since most of the output of Hollywood now looks like it's in the beginning, I can't see a great reason not to let it loose on the next Marvel universe.
Yeah, well, if the producers get the way, then they probably would. But there have been strikes over just that issue, haven't they?
They in America, but not here.
Yeah,
can't strike here.
So you've actually written scripts now for TV, film, variety, radio, stage.
Well,
is it all just writing, or are they all very different ways of expressing yourself?
Ideas. It's that well, look, we started in TV. Well, we started in radio, but we really had made our name in television. So that's all we knew. But we were guided by very good people all the way through our career. I mean, when we came to the stage, who better would you have asked for than Alan Aikell? And Alan was happy to help us and show us and teach us. And so that was a good introduction. So we learned them, the way of the stage. I often quote something Alan said to us very early on. He said, I can't teach you to make an audience laugh, because you can do that as well as I can. And I can't teach you about characterization, because you do that as well as I can. But what I can teach you is how to get the buggers on and off the stage. And so that's what he taught us, how to get the buggers on and off the stage. That was okay. Musicals, of course, we had no idea. We were really thrown in at the deep end there, because we didn't realize that it was like a military operation. That when we got into a rehearsal room, there were different divisions, different battalions, one called choreography. There was the musical arrangement battalion. There was the acting battalion. And so we were just sitting there really way out of our depth. All we could do was do what we'd always done, which was produce a really good, compelling story. And then let all the experts bring it together.
I think being ignorant of relatively ignorant theatre. I remember when I was at school, I was lucky enough to have one of those influential English teachers, and he was very good at it. And he told us all, and we all believed him, that the most important thing if you want to write a play is to build yourself a cardboard theatre and cardboard characters. Cut it out, know where they were going to stand and move, and so on and so forth. Wonderful man, tremendously important man. I completely wrong with it. Writing is a theatre from a point of view of total ignorance. It's the best thing you can possibly do, because the playwright's job is to tell the story, And the theatre's job is to make the story come to life. And the director will say yay or nay. We've worked with the director, we're working with the director on yet another project. And he wrote the first version of it. It was deliberately a piece of monster theatre with 25 actors on 3 levels. And she said, that's wonderful. We could make that work if we could get a national.
Yeah.
You can't have a national. Why don't you make it a one-man show? It's the same play.
Yeah.
There's more than one way to skin a mouse. And that's why we're still doing it at this advanced age, because it's so interesting.
Yeah, I was speaking to a couple of directors a few weeks ago, and they're saying that some in theatre, some apparently creative decisions are just made for entirely practical reasons, like you can't bring any set on from stage left or something like that.
Really? I mean, I'm sure someone's written a book, I should have done, about all the characters in Shakespeare plays who suddenly vanished because they were doubling someone else. Well, that's why you don't see Lady N from Act 3, Scene 2 onwards, and she's now Malcolm.
Yeah. So, apart from this play, which is running at the moment, what else have you got in the pipeline that you can talk about?
But the next thing in the pipeline, oddly enough, which has nothing to do with theatre, is we're writing a Goodnight Sweetheart book, a novelisation of the Goodnight Sweetheart series. And that happened because it wasn't commissioned.
All right.
It was Gran and ourselves and the plans. That was 8 years ago. And we were approached by a publisher and he said, would you like to do a book? So we said, oh, you would. Okay. So we're doing that. And then, well, we have 2 or 3 projects. One of them is this movie, which I can't talk about yet, which will come about next year. We'll say, well, that was clever. And we've also trying to get the rights to a film that we really enjoyed with a critical success for the stage. And if we get those rights, we know we've got a couple of really, really terrific actors who want to do it. So next time we have a song, we're not going to talk about that.
Then, of course, there's the play we're writing.
Yeah.
Which is another adaptation, really, of a radio play we had on in February.
Previously had 25 characters. But it was a radio play with 25 characters. We turned it into a stage play with 25 characters.
And then the director said, could you make it 1 character? Then we can get a mega star to play it, and we can put it on in any theatre because you won't need a lot of space.
This is now turning, if we're lucky, we want to finish it. I think we'll all finish it this month, or first half. It'll be one of those plays that all producers love. 1 set, 1 person, same amount of money at the box office. It's actually a protagonist in someone who plays anyone else. Not quite stones in their pockets, but anyone who's seen that will know that if you can create that sort of world with 2 people and no costume change, everyone says, that's theatre. People think The Greatest Showman is theatre, but that sort of stuff's easy.
Yeah. And of course, actors love to be able to show off lots of different characters.
Yeah, to be on stage for 75, 80 minutes on their own, they'll be queuing up.
75 minutes straight through.
We're not having an act break.
I think possibly there'll have to be a scene where he says, when he goes to the toilet but keeps talking, and we'll record that bit. Give him time.
We'll just see the crash, give him time off. Anyway, so we're pretty busy. I mean, it's interesting at this stage of our career that we should be as busy as we are, really.
Only because the theatre, for all its travails, is still much more open and pluralistic than TV or film. There are more producers, there are big theatres, there are small theatres. TV is a sort of holiday resort with 2 entrances and armed guards on them. And you can talk way past the armed guards, but it's such a drag.
Everything takes so long. So even if we were to go in next Monday with a lovely idea and they said, yeah, we'd really like to do this, you're still waiting 2 to 3 years before it's actually made and on.
Yeah.
And the film is worse. That's 10 years. So at least if you write a really good play and you get a really good theatre or producer, the chances are you could have it on inside 12 months.
Well, I suppose for the fact that I often say, I pretend I'm joking, but I'm not really. But only retirement means the same amount of work for half the money. And I think in the theatre and radio to some degree, what it does is it asks you why you write. In television, you can say, well, I write because I enjoy it and the money's good. And in the theatre, you can say, I write because I enjoy it.
But I said to somebody yesterday, they said to me in the play, is there a lot different from television? I said, look, all the body of work Maurice and I have is always the same. Doesn't matter whether we watch it today or 10 years ago. It is the same. It is cast in stone. Every night at the theatre is different. And you're also sitting with your audience. That's the main difference. You know, when people, as I've said this many times, but when people tell me, do you realise you had 20 million people watching your programme last night? I don't know. I can't see them. Where are they? But when I'm sitting with 100 people in an audience or 800 people in an audience, at least I'm surrounded by laughter and excitement. And so you can see.
Can be surrounded by bitterness and resentment. That's it. I think
that's yet to happen, I think.
I have sat through a few scant matinees, but generally speaking, we've been very lucky. I think I often compare when I'm pontificating television and film to lager and typically to real ale. Because we say it's in the can. It's in the can. You can't do anything with it. If someone falls off a tightrope in a movie, you know, he's going to die or not die, depending on whether his usefulness to the plot. If someone falls off a tightrope on stage, literally he's not supposed to. You're talking about that for weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, apart from anything else, the audience is different, so the audience will change the performance every night as well. Absolutely. I'm sure there's going to be nights in the run of this play, as I said earlier in this interview, where the audience will laugh. And then once the audience laugh, they'll know they're allowed to laugh, and they'll laugh again. Other nights it will be like last night, very tense, hear a pin drop.
Oddly enough, the audience are more comfortable, the more serious it got, because it was less conflicting.
Yeah.
And also, the cliche of warming up. The theatre does warm up. The body's in the theatre. The room is different in the second act, in every theatre I've ever been. Particularly music, people get very excited. In the second act, it's 5 degrees hotter in the room.
That was Marx and Gran, Laurence and Maurice, talking about Dr. Freud Will See You Now, Mrs. Hitler, which opened at Upstairs at the Gatehouse in London on the 4th of September and runs until the 28th of September 2025. For more information and tickets, see www.upstairsatthegatehouse.com, or for more information about Marx and Gran, including a comprehensive biography of their partnership since the 1970s, see marxandgran.com.
You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.